brief discussion will have 4 different areas. First, we're going to talk about the theory of fair markets in outline. We're only going to discuss the access part of the theory. Then we're going to move on to non-public information, and we're going to define what MNPI means. Then we're going to move into materiality. These are questions about, hey, does this information affect whether or not someone would invest in this stock, bond, or whatever? And last but not least, the lesson. The theory of fair markets has a lot of different pieces. However, we're just going to focus on one of the pieces, and that is everyone trades, buys and sells, on the same information. No one has privileged information giving them an advantage over another. Why? Because that leads to unfair trading and taking advantage of other people. When it comes to material, we have to ask ourselves, can the information that we're holding or understanding or figured out or heard from somewhere else or were tipped to, could it affect the stock price or the decision to trade? If the answer is yes, that information is called material. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about public and non-public information. Non-public information is just information that hasn't been announced yet, or has been obscured in a very, dark, dimly lit corner of the internet that no one really knows about. It's the kind of information that just shouldn't be out there yet. However, it could be published in the future. Then together, we're going to fuse all this together to come up with the idea of MNPI, which is an acronym for Material Non-Public Information. The equation for this is pretty straightforward, believe it or not. If you have a piece of information that's material, that can affect the stock price or the purchase price or the selling price of a good, service, stock, bond, whatever, and if it's coupled with non-public information, i.e. only stuff insiders would know about, for example, like the C-suite would only know about a tender offer or a merger, things like that. If you combine material information that can change a stock price with the fact that that information is non-public, that is material non-public information that you cannot trade on. If you trade on it, that's called insider trading, and will probably, most likely, get you landed in jail or at least a very messy lawsuit. Let's discuss a little more about non-public information. But first, we're going to have to ask ourselves, what is public information? Public information is the ideas and information that come out in press releases, SEC filings, or some other recognized outlet. For example, a Form 10-K or 10-Q, the quarterly or annual reporting of the company to the SEC. An 8-K, which is a fancy way of saying PR. And something like the Bloomberg Terminal or the Wall Street Journal, something like that. Something that is recognized as an outlet for financial information. Anything in those categories or portals or whatever you want to call them is public information. Why? Because everyone has access to it. It doesn't allow one person to have an unfair advantage over another. Now, non-public information is a little different. These are things that tend to be internally managed by a company. For example, audit sheets, draft proposal, research and development information, forecast, private emails, and so forth. These things, these forms of communications or documents contain information that is not publicly disseminated. It is not in the public information sphere, if you want to think of it that way. For some reason, the company is holding on to it, keeping it private, or privileged. Also, tipping people off on this sort of information will also qualify you, believe it or not, for insider trading as well, because even tipped information qualifies as MNPI. Now, what's the difference? The difference really isn't tough to figure out. If the information has been disseminated in a way such that everyone can have access to it, then it's public information. If it's information that hasn't been disseminated, really, it's still private or protected or in emails or buried in some obscure document that only 3 people can actually access in the whole world, that's protected information or non-public information. And that's how you tell the difference. Let's chat a little bit about materiality or material. What makes news or information material? And it's pretty easy. Material information influences whether a person would buy or sell or trade a stock, a good, a commodity, an item, a home, whatever. If there's information that will affect their worldview and affect their determination on whether to buy or sell, then that's material. A good litmus test for this is just to ask a simple question. If I want to buy something on inside information, I have to ask myself, would the seller still want to execute at this price if they knew what I knew? If the answer is yes, then it's probably not quite insider information. However, if the answer is no, that the seller would not want to sell knowing that what I know, then it probably is insider information or material information. So if I know something that can affect the value of a good, product, service, stock, bond, whatever it is, and I go out and try to buy it from someone at a cheap price, knowing that it's going to go up in value, and if that person doesn't know that same information I do, I'm taking advantage of them. I'm violating the fair market idea. And that leads to the concept of insider trading. A good example is down here. For example, let's say somehow you found out about a pending offer to buy a stock for 120% of its current value and you went out buying it today. Would you be taking advantage of a seller or making an unfair market while buying the stock? The answer is yes. You have privileged information that the seller doesn't have. The seller's understanding of the price or the value of the stock that you're trying to buy differs from yours because you have privileged information, or MNPI.